This cat is just meowing at me. Where are you? Why? He's hungry all the time. All the time. So today I'm going to bring, I had fermented some feed earlier this week, although it is in the garage so it's cold in here, so it is kind of like a big refrigerator. So it's more of like soaked grain, but because I soaked it in whey from the cheese that I had made, it does have, it has fermented. Okay, so I'm just using like a big stick here, but this is the fermented grain. You can see that it has really bulked up in size. There's a lot of water in here, a lot of water content because you want it completely covered. I'm just going to bring this out to the chickens and show you how much they love it. Isn't that yummy, girls? Yummy! Yummy, girls! Ducky, come get some too! Okay, okay. I'm on it. I'm on it, girls. Oh, yeah. Yummy. Here, I'll put some on this block for you, girls. Who's coming over? Who's coming? Here, I'll leave this here while I feed the sheep. Okay, I'll leave that there. Go ahead. Uh-oh, Ducky's trying to get in there. So now I'm going to show you how I like to make some fermented grain. Oftentimes I will use just water or I will use the whey from cheese that I make. But today, and actually probably my most favorite way, is to use sourdough discard. So this time of year, it is the spring, and I throw away my starter every year. I'll tell you why here in just a few minutes. But what I do is I take all the starter that's on my counter and in the refrigerator. So the starter in their fridge that has the hooch on it, which you just saw me pull out. That black liquid on top is called hooch. It just means that the starter is hungry. And it is actually discard that I use for other recipes, but this one's been sitting in there for a little while. But that liquid on top is totally fine. It just creates a little bit of more of a sour flavor for whatever you're using it for. But today we're going to give it to the chickens. So what I do is I just fill up a bucket. Oftentimes I'll use a 5-gallon pail. Today I'm just going to use this ice cream container and just put all the sourdough starter and the discard that I have in there. Fill the rest up with water, and then we're going to add in the grains. So you can ferment any kind of like whole grain. I typically do like corn and oats. I put some sunflower seeds in there. Whatever my feed at the time, my like scratch feed at the time has in it, I will put that in there. You definitely don't want to ferment like a crumble or a pellet. That just turns to straight mush, and it's really not going to ferment very well. I mean, yes, it will ferment, but it'll be just a pile of mush, and you really just don't get as much of the benefits because it's already ground down. And part of the purpose of fermenting is to break down the outer layer of your whole grain so that it's easier digested and more bioavailable for your animals to eat. So with that being said, we're just adding in, this is a really basic scratch. It looks like it's mostly corn. Like I said, it does have oats in here. It does have a few other things kind of broken up little pieces in there. But this ferments really well, and the chickens seriously love it. And the nice thing about using a sourdough starter or discard or even just the whey for fermenting grain is because the process is already started for you. You already have fermentation benefits happening in the liquid you're using. And so not only does fermentation happen faster, but you actually don't have to let it sit as long if you want to get those benefits. Just let it sit long enough to really break down that outer layer of the grain, and you'll have a really nice soaked grain, and that provides a lot of benefits for them as well. So now let's make our little feathered friends some chicken oatmeal, some sourdough oatmeal. I also have some old applesauce that I made here that got shoved to the back of the fridge. I'm going to put that in their oatmeal today too. So this is a discard that I had in the fridge. It's actually really happy still. It has so many bubbles. And sometimes it's really hard to throw away all my starter every spring. But I know that I can just make a new one and that there's good reason for me throwing this away. So if you're over there cringing, wondering, oh my gosh, why is she throwing away all her starter? Here's why. In the first month, on the 14th day of the new moon in the evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the new moon in the evening. For 7 days no leaven is to be found in your houses. For if anyone eats what is leavened, that same being shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether sojourner or native of the land. Do not eat that which is leavened. In all your dwellings you are to eat unleavened bread. That's Exodus 12:18-20. Which is just a tiny snippet of that chapter and that entire book of Exodus. Highly recommend it. That book in particular is incredibly interesting and a really prominent piece of history. For many years, I knew nothing about the biblical feast days, and now that I know about them, I want to try to honor them and bring them into my home as much as possible. So that is why I remove the leaven from my home and I discard it, and I just throw away the sourdough starter, because if you're really thinking about biblical times, they didn't have chemical leaveners. They didn't have pre-made breads. What they had on the counter or in their homes were a wild yeast starter. And that is what I throw away in our household. Okay, so back to the oatmeal as I have my hand motions going on back here. I'm trying to explain to you that I have water coming to a boil in this pan here, and my daughter here is going to help me scoop whole rolled oats into this pot. Now, I am not measuring this. I am using a 1 cup scoop, but it's not measured. All I want to do is make a really thick oatmeal because we're going to add in the starter and the applesauce over here, which is going to loosen it a lot. So I want the oatmeal to be really thick on the stove as it's cooking. So I'm just going to fill this pot and we're going to get it nice and thick. And she loves to help. Any way that she can help, she's all about it. So I definitely try to let her. So I'll take a couple big scoops here in between just to kind of speed things up a little bit. But definitely allowing her to help is so incredibly sweet, and hopefully a skill that she will continue to want to do in the kitchen is just to be a big helper. So the reason I haven't added the sourdough starter yet is because I don't want the heat of this to completely cook off all of the positive benefits that there are in the fermentation that has already happened. So I'm going to cook the oatmeal real quick. And then as we get all the oatmeal in there, then we're going to add in the sourdough starter. And once we add in the starter, it gets this really nice creamy texture, and the chickens really love it. Now make sure anytime you're feeding your chickens something that has kind of a thicker texture that can stick on their beaks, you want to make sure they have water to drink so that they don't get it all stuck to their beaks and get all grimy and icky. They will kind of wipe their beaks on the ground if they don't get it off right away, but they love it. This is just such a nice, easy treat for them. And it's such a great source of vitamins and minerals. And you can add anything to this. Like I said, with this applesauce, this was just sitting in the back of the refrigerator, needed to be used up. And it was an easy go-to. Let's just toss that in. You can toss in like flax seeds, different types of seeds, or you can add in some of just some of their chicken feed as well. You can add in yogurt, or just really honestly, there's so many things you can add. So now that this is ready to go, it's plumped up quite a bit. It could even be a little thicker than this, but it's completely up to you, your preference. We're going to put in the sourdough starter and the applesauce. This starter is, like I showed you earlier, it's actually really a really happy discard, and I'm really sad that I'm throwing it away. But We're going to make a new one in a few weeks. But look at, it's still so like bubbly in there. It's really thick, but it's really quite happy in there. I could have totally just fed this like once or twice and had like a crazy starter going. Now I do have a secret ingredient that I'm going to show you in just a moment, and that is crushed eggshells. Now, not just any eggshells. These are their own eggshells, which is just so cool to me that their own eggshells provide a source of calcium, which actually can help their eggshells come out harder, like they can be stronger. So making sure that they have enough calcium in their diet is super important, and it's such an easy way to do that. And what we do, instead of like, I don't take the time to like rinse off the eggshells or anything like that. I mean, I really honestly don't have time for that. So what we do is, as we crack the eggs, we just set them in a little like pan off to the side here, and then we will crush, or we will bake them at like a really low temp, at probably like 200 or 300, probably like 200, just until they get like crispy. And then we put them in this jar and we just crunch them up. And this is actually a thing that my daughter here likes to do. She loves to just crush up the eggshells. And it's a great way to just, again, include her in that. But again, we can just toss that into their feed. Or today, I just poured that all over myself. We're putting it in their oatmeal. And it's a great way to get that calcium into their diet. Now you just have to taste it. Just kidding. That's gross.